Many people today are fascinated by those documentaries about those Roman gladiators, right? They're intrigued, and maybe we've seen pictures of them. We know they had to undergo some training before they fought in the arenas. And some of that training would involve use of a weapon, wouldn't it? But can you imagine that gladiator, would-be gladiator? He's there receiving training about how to use his weapon to defend himself and attack. And while the instruction's going on, his mind starts to daydream and starts to wonder, why did I have to get up so early? I wonder what's for lunch today. Does that man have to shout so hard? How long do you think that gladiator would last in the arena? He'd probably be picked up pretty quickly, wouldn't he? Because he wasn't paying attention, he wasn't thinking seriously about what he was being taught. So what is it today that's going to equip us, like that gladiator, to not only to fend off attacks from Satan's world, but also to go on the offensive? Well, as the theme of our talk says, taking time to meditate on spiritual things is going to fortify us spiritually to fend off the attacks of Satan and this wicked system. So during our talk, we're going to look at several different points. If you're taking notes, why meditation is important. There's a worldly view of meditation, is that right or wrong? Is it beneficial or harmful for us? What does proper meditation involve? And also, what kind of things should we meditate on, and maybe should we not meditate on too? So meditation is encouraged in the Bible. As we saw, our opening song was based on Psalm 19:14, wasn't it, where the psalmist talked about the meditation of my heart, wanted that to be pleasurable or pleasing to Jehovah. Where does this process start? Well, we might remember Jesus said in John 17:3 that we have to come to know Jehovah, don't we? We have to get to know Jehovah. We have to take in knowledge. How do we take in knowledge of our grand Creator? Well, there are two ways, aren't there? One way is by studying his creative works, the physical creation. We can maybe think of big things like the universe, the planets, maybe a creature like the blue whale. We maybe have never seen one, we've just seen pictures. There was one on eBay a while ago, wasn't there? It was stuck on the coast up in Newfoundland. They tried to sell it, but it was a dead one. You know, the tongue of a blue whale is 2.5 tons. The creature weighs about as much as 30 elephants, and yet it's surprisingly agile in the water. Or we could think of very small things. In one of our publications it mentions the black-pole warbler. It's a tiny little bird. It weighs 3/4 of an ounce. You probably wouldn't even feel it on your hand. Its brain is the size of a pea. And yet, that creature migrates for thousands of miles, but it does so in a very interesting way. It sets off in the wrong direction. But it knows someone has programmed it that at a certain point a prevailing wind will take it in the proper direction, and it arrives at its destination. Isn't that amazing? What do these things teach us? Well, we see Jehovah's wisdom, don't we? We see Jehovah's wisdom evident in his creative works, his qualities. So we can observe his creative works, we can take in knowledge of God through his word, the Bible, but do we piece the two together, what we read with what we see? Do we discern or think about Jehovah's qualities that we read about in the Bible and that we see in the physical creation? Because a well-built house, it brings credit not to the person who lives there, right, but to the builder. Likewise, when we see these wonderful things that Jehovah has made, it should increase our awe and our respect for our grand Creator. As we've said, meditation is encouraged in the Bible, and Jehovah actually gave Joshua a very important assignment. It was a very difficult one, but he gave him a recipe for success that would help him in this assignment. We know that was leading the nation of Israel into the promised land. Why don't we look at Joshua chapter 1 and verse 8 and refresh our memories what Jehovah said Joshua needed to do in order to be successful in carrying out this weighty assignment. Joshua chapter 1, if we look at verse 8 there, so Jehovah says, "This book of the law should not depart from your mouth, and you must read it in an undertone day and night, in order to observe carefully all that is written in it, for then your way will be successful, and then you will act wisely. So, do you think the mere act of reading God's law would have made Joshua successful in his assignment? We'd have to say no, right? We'd have to say, really, he would have to not only read, but to think, how am I going to apply this in this difficult assignment, dealing with this difficult nation that Jehovah has assigned me to lead? So it was not just a matter of reading. Joshua had to meditate. He had to think and ponder how he was going to use that information. Meditation in the scriptures is a characteristic of a wise and an understanding person. For instance, Psalm 49 and verse 3, it says, "May the meditation of my heart will show understanding." Who of us here doesn't want to be thought of as a wise and an understanding person? And in a spiritual context, that's what meditation can do for us. So the real pleasure of the righteous one results from fulfilling a genuine desire to apply Jehovah's law, not to miss a day without thinking upon it in order to apply it in our daily lives. Now, as we've said, there's a worldly view of meditation, isn't there? Is that beneficial or is that harmful for us as Christians? There are two types of meditation that the world sometimes engages in. In the 1960s, many rock stars and movie stars went out to India to see these yogis, these holy men, to learn how to meditate. Well, they borrowed some practices from this Hindu meditation, and some of them involve chanting. You know, have you ever seen or heard people chanting? They're chanting in another language, aren't they? But some of these chants actually involve giving praise to Brahma as the creator. Who does Revelation chapter 4 and verse 11 tell us that we should give honor and glory and praise to? Isn't it Jehovah? It's the creator of all things. So that kind of chanting, that kind of meditation would be harmful for us as Christians. It would be wrong. Some of the initiation rites of this meditation involve use of an altar. Again, that would be dangerous for us, wouldn't it? 1 John 5:21 tells us we should guard ourselves from idols. We don't want to get involved in that. There's another practice that many use. It was referred to in a recent Awake magazine, this process of emptying the mind. They say, well, you've got to have a clear mind to think clearly. It sounds good, doesn't it? But is there a danger for us as Christians in emptying our mind of everything? Jesus stated a principle. Let's look at what he said in Matthew chapter 12. Let's see if we can discern what he's saying. Matthew chapter 12. Take a look at verse 43. We'll just start there. He said, when an unclean spirit comes out of a man, it passes through waterless places in search of a resting place, and it finds none. Then it says, I will go back to my house from which I moved, and on arriving, it finds the house unoccupied, but swept clean and adorned. Then it goes and takes along with it 7 different spirits, more wicked than itself, and after getting inside, they dwell there, and the final circumstances of that man become worse than the first. So can you see what, from the illustration that Jesus gave there, the danger in this practice of emptying the mind? If a house is vacant and there's nobody around, well, anybody can go in and claim it, can't they, and just settle in there. Likewise with our mind, if we empty our mind, we're actually leaving room for Satan the devil and his wicked demons to pollute our mind. And there's nothing that Satan and the demons would like more than to fill our mind with their unholy propaganda. So that's very dangerous. There's another practice which many people get into. You can do a little bit of research on it, yoga. They say it's for health and for relaxation. Some of it involves this meditation. Is there any danger in yoga? Well, the English word yoke comes from this word yoga. And the purpose of yoga is to yoke together an individual with the universal spirit. This is derived from Eastern religions. So since yoga is linked to false religion, what kind of spirit do you think you're linking yourself together with? Certainly not Jehovah God, is it? So there's a danger in that. As I said, you can do a little bit of research on that subject of yoga and meditation. So what does proper meditation involve then for us? The Society gave an interesting definition. I'd like to read it to you. I'll read it slowly. It says, the kind of deep, concentrated thinking in which a person seriously reflects on past experiences, ponders and muses over current matters, or thoughtfully contemplates future events. Did you notice some of those words that were used there? Deep, concentrated thinking, serious reflection, pondering and musing, thoughtful contemplation. We're not talking about daydreaming, are we? Just letting our mind wander like a boat, going with the tide down the stream, just let it go. During periods of relaxation, that might be nice to let our mind wander a little bit. But if we were to do that during a period of study or a meeting, well, that really would be like idling a car engine, wouldn't it? We're burning gas but not getting anywhere. Who of us today could burn a car engine for a couple of hours? You seen the price of gas? That would be an expensive waste of time, wouldn't it? So we don't want to just let our mind idle like that. No, our mind should be focused. We don't want to have distractions like, there's lots of distractions, gadgets today, aren't there? Smartphones and computers and tablets and music even. Some people like to have the TV on when they read, Can't really do that. We need to be focused without distractions. When could we find time for meditation? There's an interesting scripture in Psalm 63:6 where the psalmist spoke about during the night watches, I meditate on you, on Jehovah. Have you ever had a sleepless night? If you've got children, probably. Right? It's quiet at night time, isn't it? Wouldn't that be a good time if we couldn't sleep? When it's nice and quiet, to do some meditation on spiritual things. There's some other examples here. One of them is in Genesis 24, verse 63. It mentions Isaac. He was walking, it says, in the field about evening time in order to meditate. What did Isaac have to meditate on? Well, there was a lot, wasn't there? There was a search going on for a wife for him from among Jehovah's people. There was his role in the fulfillment of Jehovah's promise with regard to the seed. Isaac found a quiet time to meditate. There's some other examples. Here's one from the Kingdom Ministry of 2010. It says, even with a busy schedule, we can find time for meditation. Some do so while taking public transportation. Others use part of their lunch break for undisturbed contemplation. Many find that meditating before sharing in the ministry, even for a few moments, helps them to preach with greater zeal and boldness. So we should seek out times for meditation. But both the heart and the mind need to be involved in meditation. We might say, well, how does that work? How do we get our heart and mind involved in meditation? One speaker at a convention likened meditation to worry. All of us know how to worry, don't we? You imagine the principal at school or your boss at work says, Johnson, I want a word with you on Monday morning. He tells you on Friday. How do you spend the weekend? Carefree? No. You churn it over, don't you, in your mind. The whole weekend you're thinking, well, if he says this, I'll say this. And if he brings up this, I'll explain this. And you can't stop thinking about it the whole weekend. So worry is a little bit like meditation. We need to take time to ponder, to churn over what we read and what we study. Meditation in the scriptures is associated with the figurative heart. What's the figurative heart? Well, that's our inner person, isn't it? What we really are deep down inside. So when we reflect appreciatively on the things that we read, the things that we hear and study, it filters down onto the figurative person, our inner person, the figurative heart. It stirs our feelings, touches our emotions, it influences how we think. So then our personal attachment to our loving Creator Jehovah is going to grow, and that's going to affect how we live our life day to day as Christians. Perhaps like me, maybe you were brought up in the countryside. Have you ever seen a cow chewing the cud? They just seem to go on and on chewing, on and on and on, don't they, over and over again, without even taking another mouthful. That process is called ruminating. Ruminating is another word for meditating, by the way. So a cow ruminates. He has to chew the cud and he has to ruminate, bring up the things that he's already swallowed and chew them over and over and over again. But a cow can't ruminate on an empty stomach, can he? He has to have eaten and swallowed food to bring up again, to chew over. Likewise with us, we can't meditate on an empty mind. The more Bible study that we do, the more spiritual thoughts we'll have to chew over, if you like. You know, our new Bible has a section there, doesn't it, on section 30, with how to get the most out of our Bible reading. And it's another way to meditate. It mentions we can ask ourselves questions when we read and study. For instance, what does this teach me about Jehovah? How does it fit in with the overall theme of the Bible? Can we discern that? How could I apply this information in my daily life? Important too, how can I use it to help others? You see, these are the kind of questions that we can ask. Questions demand answers, don't they? That's why it's good to ask questions when we study or read something. That helps with this process of meditation. We said there were some things that we should avoid meditating on. Speculation is one of them. And what's speculation? Well, that's conclusions that are not actually supported by factual evidence. There is an example in 2 Timothy 2 and verse 18 of some who were speculating. Let's just see what Paul said there in 2 Timothy 2, 18. We could also see how dangerous it was. 2 Timothy 2:18, Paul says there, these men have deviated from the truth, saying that the resurrection has already occurred. And notice the effect. It says they are subverting the faith of some. Yes, some were disregarding the physical resurrection. They were saying, no, the resurrection is a spiritual one. When you become a Christian, you've already experienced, if you like, a spiritual resurrection. It says they were subverting the faith of some. If some were to pay attention to that, well, they could maybe adopt the worldly thinking, couldn't they? Let's eat and drink and be merry. There's no resurrection. Let's just have a good time, right? So that was very dangerous speculation. But we might say, well, I would never speculate. How could we fall victim to speculation? Well, for instance, perhaps we look at events that are happening in one part of the world. And we could say, well, you know, I'm sure this is going to lead to the Great Tribulation. This is going to be the spark that's going to set it off. And we might be convinced, you know, we might even tell other people about our speculating on these events that are happening. But when it doesn't happen, maybe we might get disappointed. We might lose face. We might even start up to put off Jehovah's Day. Well, maybe it's not as close as I thought. Maybe it's a little bit farther. We might be tempted to maybe get all we can out of this system of things in a material way or for pleasure or whatever. We might slowly start to drift out of the truth. That could happen as a result of speculation. Jesus spoke of anguish of nations, didn't he? Plural, not just one. So we want to avoid speculation. Satan has a propaganda machine, the entertainment industry. It's saturated with violence and immorality, and he would like nothing better than for us to meditate and think about those things that he presents as entertainment to us. So we want to avoid maybe scheming or thinking about improper desires, how we could fulfill them in this system. We don't want to fall victim to Satan's propaganda machine. Meditate on those things. So what could we meditate on then? What are good things? Well, spiritual things. There was an interesting daily text in February of this year. I'd like to read to you what it said. An example of something really beautiful that we could meditate on. It said, in lands around the globe, only Jehovah's Witnesses have adopted God's way of thinking as a group. By learning to see things as Jehovah does, they have been able mentally and emotionally to break down national barriers. Instead of treating members of differing national groups with distrust, suspicion, or even outright hatred, they have learned to cherish the variety of characteristics and abilities of these groups as something beautiful. Have you reflected on this accomplishment and how it has benefited you personally in dealing with others? Isn't it beautiful to belong to an international organization of brotherhood? Have you taken time to ponder and think about what a beautiful benefit that is from being in the truth? That's certainly something good that we could meditate on. In 1 Timothy 4, Paul gave Timothy some counsel. Let's have a look at that together. 1 Timothy 4, 15 and 16. So Paul's advice to Timothy: ponder over these things, be absorbed in them, so that your advancement may be plainly seen by all people. Pay constant attention to yourself and to your teaching. Persevere in these things, for by doing this you will save both yourself and those who listen to you. So Paul was encouraging Timothy to ponder, to meditate, to think about his conduct, his teaching, his ministry. Can we do the same? What about our conduct? Is our conduct at the Kingdom Hall different from our conduct at school or at work or in the home? Can we ponder, and do we need to make an adjustment? Can we make that adjustment and bring it all in line with the way we behave at the Kingdom Hall? What about counsel? All of us get counsel, don't we? Sometimes it's from the platform. Sometimes it's from reading the Bible. Sometimes it's maybe from a mature brother or sister. You give counsel and say, listen, you're a little bit off guard here. Maybe you need to change your direction a little bit. How do we respond to counsel? Can we think? Can we ponder? Can we meditate on counsel that we receive in order to make improvement in our conduct, or whatever area that they've observed we maybe need to make a little adjustment? In Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 29, Jehovah asked Israel to think about where their conduct was leading them in view of the past. We could ask the same question. Where is our conduct leading us now? Because the scriptures say we reap what we will sow. The Israelites reaped bitter consequences, didn't they, from a lack of faith in Jehovah. What about our conduct? Something else that we could meditate on. What about our relationship with Jehovah? Have you ever seen a young child, very young, holding on tightly to the mother or father's hand? There's absolute confidence, isn't there? Trust. Really, they know they can depend on their parent. Is our relationship with Jehovah like that? Trusting, fully confident, and depending on Jehovah, our loving Heavenly Father. Can we improve and make it stronger, make it like that? We have a beautiful example in the book of Hosea about one of Jehovah's qualities, the quality of mercy. Jehovah's qualities are certainly something that we can meditate on. In the book of Hosea, Jehovah demonstrated his mercy through the prophet towards repentant Israelites. Elders in particular could imitate Jehovah's quality of mercy, couldn't they? When they're dealing with somebody who's sincerely repentant over something wrong that they've done, they can imitate Jehovah's mercy towards such ones. But all of us could do that, couldn't we? There's no one here that hasn't maybe been upset by something somebody has done or said in the Kingdom Hall or in our family. Can we be like Jehovah and imitate that beautiful quality of being ready to forgive, being merciful? What did Jesus say on the Sermon on the Mount? Happy are the merciful, right? Why? They will be shown mercy. What a beautiful quality of Jehovah's, to imitate mercy. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 32 mentions something that we could meditate on too. Hebrews 10 and verse 32. So Paul encouraged the brothers there. He said, keep remembering the former days in which after you were enlightened, you endured a great struggle along with sufferings. So Paul encouraged the Hebrews to remember their former acts of loyalty. Remembering how they'd been faithful in the past could actually strengthen them and help them to be loyal in the future. The same can be true for us today. All of us have overcome something to be here at the Kingdom Hall today, haven't we? Whether it be opposition from family or friends, relatives who are not in the truth, whether it be personality traits, undesirable ones that we've had to struggle and fight hard for, maybe over health issues. We're here at the Kingdom Hall. Remembering how we've been loyal and faithful can actually help us in the future. Also, maybe meditating on our past mistakes. We might think, now, what use is that? The past is gone, it's behind me. But actually meditating, Jehovah encouraged the Israelites to look at where they'd gone wrong in the past. That could actually help them to avoid making the same mistakes in the future. So that's something that we can do too. See maybe where we've made an error in judgment, or maybe failed to apply Bible principles or compromised in some way. Maybe we can make an adjustment so that we don't make the same mistake in the future. What about our goals, our spiritual goals, our spiritual priorities? We know we're encouraged many times, aren't we, to review how we're using our time, our energy, our resources. Are we giving the best that we can possibly give according to our circumstances to Jehovah? These are things that we can meditate on. Really serving Jehovah with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. That would be something positive to meditate on. What are the benefits of meditation? I'd just like to read you an experience again from one of our watchtowers in 2001. It mentions 32-year-old Lisa explains how she came to appreciate the value of purposeful study and meditation. After my baptism in 1994, I was quite active in the truth for about 2 years. I attended all the Christian meetings, devoted from 30 to 40 hours per month to the field ministry, and associated with fellow Christians. So it's pretty good, eh? Sounds like she was very active spiritually. But what happened? It says, I started to drift away. I sank so low that I even violated God's law. But I woke up and decided to clean up my life. How glad I am that Jehovah has recognized my repentance and accepted me back. I have often pondered, why did I fall away? The answer that I keep coming back to is that I neglected purposeful study and meditation. What does she decide to do? She said, Bible truth just had not reached my heart. From now on, personal study and meditation will always be a significant part of my life. So we see the benefits there of purposeful study and meditation. We could say the sister was in the truth, but was the truth in her? Well, she herself acknowledges it hadn't penetrated to that inner person, figurative heart. So that's the benefit meditation can do for us. It can equip us spiritually to cope with the pressures and the problems that this wicked world brings upon us. So don't let the fast pace of life keep you from taking time to meditate on spiritual things. Jesus, a perfect man, sought out solitary times where he could pray and meditate. If that was so for a perfect man, how much more so for us, as imperfect humans? We need to take time to meditate on spiritual things. Follow Jesus' example. Treasure such times that are set aside for study and meditation. In doing so, not only will we be an encouragement to our family and to others in the congregation, but will also strengthen and deepen our relationship with our grand and loving Creator, Jehovah God. Thank you, brothers.
Brother Adams, we want to thank you for taking the time out to minister to us today, helping us to see why it's important for us to meditate on spiritual things and how we might do so. Thank you very much. Brothers